Welcome to the Honeymoon Mindset podcast. Even with kids, you can have a honeymoon mindset. We are your hosts,
Kimberly Mullen.
and James Deppa. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Honeymoon Mindset with kids. We are continuing this week with the second part of dealing with kids' emotions. How do we talk to kids? How do we listen to them? And what are the effects of positively dealing with kids' emotions? Here is part 2 of last week's emotions, kids' emotions. Right.
They're so intuitive, but then they're being told that their intuition is not true.
Okay.
So they stop trusting themselves and they stop trusting you.
So true.
And a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. I'd love to share a quick story if you don't mind.
Of course.
My daughter, Sammy, the oldest, when she was 6, she was having a birthday party. And this was right about the time I really started digging into all this stuff, but I hadn't gotten to this point yet. Or even if I had read it, it didn't sink in good enough yet. And I completely denied her feelings about her birthday party out of my own doing what I thought was right. And I didn't realize how much damage I was causing.
Right.
She wanted to have an extremely small birthday party. She had a list of just a few people she wanted to invite. And I felt like her birthday's at the end of the school year. And I felt like throughout the year, she had gone to so many parties. How could you not invite the people who invited you?
Right.
You know, because I have these adult expectations in my head and I'm worried about what the parents are going to think about me.
Right.
Thank God I'm not like that anymore. But at this time, I was still very much concerned with how people felt about me and thought about me. And so I refused to let her have her small party. I invited the entire class.
Oh, wow.
And then some, because I had a ton of friends and I invited all of my friends and their kids. So the day of the party comes and she's standing there and it was at a park. So I thought, no big deal. It's a big park. We can invite everybody. As more people showed up, she would look at me and go, oh, you invited them too? And I was like, of course I did.
I can see Sammy saying that.
Oh yeah, and she'd walk away from me. And one of my best friends from long before I had children came up to me, and she's like, "So, I thanked Sammy for inviting me to my kids to her party." And she looked at me and goes, "I didn't. My mom did." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Oh.
And then, which thankfully my friend was like, she knew what was going on, and we laughed about it. But
yeah. I
still kept denying her feelings. And then there was a little girl that was not part of the party, but she was at the park and she saw us cutting cake and she ran up and she wanted a piece. So I gave the little girl a piece of cake. Sammy was pissed at me. And I'm like, what? It's the nice thing to do. What's your problem? Like, right. I couldn't grasp it at the time. Now, James, 3.5 years went by until I figured out what happened. Because every few months or so, she'd be like, remember when you gave that girl cake at my party? And I would cut her off right away because of my own failings on it, that I didn't want to be yelled at by a little kid.
Right. Or corrected.
Or told I did something wrong, you know. And I was like, Sammy, I did a nice thing. Let it go. Why can't you think of one positive thing to say about that party? It was years ago. Get over it. You know, I just would shut her down right away every time. And then when I started my healing process, and one of my life coaches was, somehow that story came up with her, and she listened to it and she's like, of course it keeps coming up. I'm like, why? Why can't she freaking let it go? It was 3.5 years ago. And she goes, because you never let her get through the negative of it. I said, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't want her to be negative. I want her to be positive. I want her to think about the positive. She can't until you accept her feelings about the negatives. And I sat there and thought about it for a little bit. And she's like, you have to let her talk it out. So the next time she brought it up naturally, I said, okay, let's talk about it. Why are you so upset about it? Let's get down to it. And she had such valid reasons, James, that I felt horrible.
Oh, wow.
One, she's like, of course I would have given the little girl cake, Mom, but it was my party and you didn't give me any choice in it. And she was already upset about so many people being there that was just an added thing.
Right.
But the valid point she had when she was like, and you invited everybody and I didn't want you to. And I was like, well, why are you so upset about that? They were your friends. And she goes, Mom, because I've been to so many birthday parties where the birthday party person is so overwhelmed with all the guests. And, she's like, I have felt left out at birthday parties because it's my friend who's having the party, but she can't give me any attention because there's 10 other people there.
Right.
And she's like, I just wanted to not have anybody feel left out. And
Oh,
I didn't want to feel torn between all these different people.
right.
So she wanted a very select few people there so she could give them each individual attention. I was like, she is so much more aware than I am. Like, oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful reason. And I am so sorry I didn't allow you to have what you wanted for your birthday. And we talked about it and I took full responsibility
Right.
for my actions. And since then, she brings it up and she laughs about it. And she can talk about how she's happy somebody showed up that she didn't invite because that was her friend. And
Right. Right. So that even
but
goes back to last week when we were talking about scheduling kids. You want them to do piano or some certain sport or keep going, and they're like, no, I don't want to. I don't want. It's taking that time to sit down and ask why. Why don't you want to? Why don't you need to? Or what's going on? What's behind it? And when you stop and listen, you can really find out what's going on in that child's mind, in the emotions and everything.
exactly.
And
You
when
have to listen.
yeah, and you can help. They will help determine their future by listening to what's going on with their emotions and in their brainwaves.
Absolutely.
The other thing is I know this has happened to you. You got 3 kids. One's that sort of little outspoken there, that little boy of yours at times. And he'll sometimes say how it is Mommy or Daddy, you made me upset. How did I make you upset? Well, you did this and this and that. It's like, how did I upset you? It could have been because of a joke that you were making or some action, whatever, and that upset them. How do you handle that?
The first thing I do is apologize. And I have had people straight out tell me that, like, people that I grew up with and older than me that are like, you don't apologize to a child. That gives them power. And I look them straight in the eye. I'm like, I will always apologize to my child if I did something
I agree.
that upset them.
I remember when my kids were little and they say, you upset me. And I know there's times where I was like, well, no, you shouldn't be upset because it wasn't meant like that. It's like, wait a minute. I just invalidated what they're thinking and feeling.
Exactly.
Acknowledging
I will say,
it.
I didn't mean it like that, and I'm sorry it upset you. I will keep that in mind for next time.
Yeah, but and then if it's something that I do on a regular basis or have been, well, I didn't know that. I will try to stop. If it does happen again, it's not intentional. I'm trying to correct it. It'll take a little bit of time.
Yes. I'll ask my kids, please give me grace.
Yep.
I'm not perfect and I will make mistakes.
Yeah.
But I absolutely apologize to my child because I am the example for them.
Yeah, most
So
definitely.
they'll know that when they hurt somebody's feelings, even when it's not on purpose, it's a nice thing to do to apologize and take responsibility for that.
Right. And the other thing that pops into my head too for a question is this: I know since my kids are getting older, and as they get older, even younger kids, there's so much information, so much detail out in this world nowadays with social media, TV, magazines, books, wherever you look, even on the radio. And it's like, oh, this is what I think and believe. I don't care what that. It's like, how do you handle something that's contradictory to what you think and believe?
So this actually just came up for us very recently. We don't allow a ton of TV, and when we do, we're really picky about what they can watch.
Right.
And the kids really, really got into this show called Bella and the Bulldogs, and it's about a junior high student girl who is quarterback for their junior high football team. Which I was like, all right, cool. That breaks some, stereotypes, and let's try it out. But while it's breaking stereotypes, it fully gave other stereotypes that were so, like, my husband and I sat there mind blown going, did they really just say that? So in the first episode, she gets upset. I wasn't fully watching, but I think the team lost or something. And she started to cry. And the coach flat out was like, oh, this isn't going to work with you being on the team then, because real men don't cry. They bury their feelings so deep that they'll never find them again. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, no,
Let's
real men cry. Real men
you know,
cry.
I don't want my daughters or my son watching this. So we shut off the show and we had a long conversation about it. And we just have to, there are going to always be things out in the world that they see that contradict the way you're trying to raise your kids. And it's up to us to be like, okay, well, let's talk about it. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, you can't watch that show ever again, and that's wrong, and you just can't feel that way. We talk it over. I'm like, okay, this is not true. Everybody has emotions. Sawyer is a boy. He's allowed to cry. He has emotions. There is, nothing in this world that should say, don't cry, don't have emotions. Don't. And anyway, we had to talk about it, and we decided to let them keep watching it because our kids are so aware of emotions and how we raise them, that they were very much like, oh, Mom, we know that's not true.
Right.
We know it's okay to cry. And that we can always come to you and you'll listen to us when we're upset. And I was like, okay, as long as that and you're not going to take on this belief that you need to be tough and not cry and suck it up. And so thankfully, they're very aware.
Yeah. The other thing I notice is a lot of times when kids say that are contradictory, I know especially with teenage years and stuff, oh, I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan or whatever. It's like, well, do you really know what that means? Where did you find this? And when you stop and ask them, you validate what they're saying and ask them, where did you hear this? They may have only gotten their information from maybe one or two sources. And a lot of times also those sources, the credibility isn't really credible. And when you sit down and have this open-ended discussion with them, you can... they will be more open to hear what you have to say, and you can bring in other facts of why, let's say, you believe one way or the other, and it becomes a dialogue, not an argument, not I'm right, you're wrong type thing. It's a dialogue.
Yes.
And I know...
the dialogue is so important, and letting them in, like you brought up vegetarian, vegan, that's a very prominent one in my house because I am a vegetarian, my husband is not.
Yeah.
And so we allow our children to have the choice.
Right.
But we talk to them about it. When they ask me why I am, I give them all the reasons I am. When they ask Daddy why he's not, he talks to them about why he's not. And then they have their choice in it.
Right. And then they can see you two dealing with it amongst yourselves, and how it can coexist beautifully, which it does.
Yeah. There's no reason you can't coexist like that. And you're right, though. A lot of the sources that children come home with are not credible. I mean, when my daughter first started going to school, she came home talking about politics, and I was like, I've never talked to you about politics. What's going on here?
Right.
Well, my friend says that, this candidate is the best choice because of this. And I'm like, oh, gosh, okay, we need to have some talks. Or we had a neighbor that was religious beliefs were much, much different than ours. And she came home crying one day because that neighbor's daughter had said something to her and basically told her God wasn't going to love her because of something. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
Like, they're going to run into these situations, and you have to be willing to have that open dialogue and explain to them why you believe this and other people are allowed to believe differently.
And I remember with Beth's boys, they'd say something or something happened at school. Well, our first reaction is to get really angry, upset, frustrated with them. And there's a couple times I remember Beth saying, you know what? With what you did, I'm very upset and angry. I'm not going to talk about it right now. I need to calm down so I don't say something I regret. And I'll come back in a half hour, 20 minutes later or whatever, and we're going to talk about it. Or if it's late at night, we're going to talk about it tomorrow sometime. Yeah,
that's a great way to handle it so that you don't overreact.
And then that's like...
with your emotions.
Yep. And then we say, okay, we want to know everything that's happened. Tell us once. And tell us the truth, because we find out different from other sources, it's going to be worse for you. So her boys knew right then and there, okay, if I'm open and honest and upfront, tell them everything that's been said, it's not that it's going to make less punishment for them or less respect, but it's respecting them and to tell the truth. And it's encourage them to tell the truth versus lying because of that trust issue. So that's built right there at the beginning. But it also helps opens up that dialogue because you're coming at it at a calm state. You get to talk to them. And even her boys will come to us, and they're 25 and 21 now, 24 and 21, sorry. And I'm like, hey, we got to talk to you. You may not like this right now. It's like, okay, but we'll keep it in mind. Let's talk about it. We respect your thoughts and feelings. You know, they pre-frame their conversations now at that age, and they still talk to us.
That's awesome.
Her one says, I'm not digging college. I don't know what I want to do. I like this, and I like that. I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated. And I'm struggling in school right now. I don't think it's the right fit. Okay, fine. But you're not coming home. You're not going to sit on the couch. You're going to have to get a job. You're going to have to do something. And you're going to have to do something to figure out what you like to do. And that's what he's done. You know?
That's great.
So these two boys who are in their 20s still come and talk to us about anything and everything. And they feel free.
Because you built that trust with them. They know they can trust you.
Yes.
And you treat them with respect. You brought up the word respect, and that is so huge. You have to treat your children with respect. You can't expect them to go out into the world you can't expect them to treat you with respect if you won't treat them with it. And you can't expect them to go out in the world and treat people with respect without showing them what that is and how to respect people.
Yeah.
And listening to them is a huge respect.
Yeah. So you want your kids to come talk to you when they're in high school? You know, most parents, I can't get them to say, well, because you haven't built that trust. You haven't built that respect, which goes all the way back to when they're younger.
Absolutely.
Like you're saying, is learning how to listen to those emotions, taking the time to acknowledge them, whether you agree with it or not, and help them figure out their emotions and work them through it, and being consistent on it.
That's it, whether you agree with them or not, and whether it seems so tiny. Like there's so many times where, you know, your kid comes to you crying and it's in your mind the most minuscule little thing that is like, I don't have time in my day to deal with. But in their mind, it's huge.
Oh, yes, for sure.
So if you don't listen to those things that you think are small, that are huge to a toddler, they're never going to come to you when they're having, you know, peer pressure issues in high school. It's not going to happen. They're going to hide it from you.
Yeah. And I can say,
hope you don't find out.
And it's not too late. I had, after my first divorce, my kids were upset and stuff. And I had rebuild a lot of trust and respect with them. So even if you don't have it at a younger age, you messed up and your kids are teenagers, you can still build that respect and trust.
Absolutely.
It starts by, hey, I'm admitting that you were wrong, talking to them, listening to them, and starting from ground zero. And it will build really, really quick.
It will.
So
absolutely. It's never too late to start it. Like my biggest wish in the world is that parents would do this inner work before they have kids. Because like I said, I know how hard it is to do it while you have kids. But it's never, ever, ever too late to start it. It does not matter if your kids are all grown and out of the house. You can still build that relationship.
Right. Yep.
So biggest things, never take it personally. Your toddler is not defying you, not trying to manipulate you. Like that is such a common misunderstanding.
Right.
Oh, they're just manipulating you. That's why they throw a tantrum, so you'll give in and give them what they want. No, they're having emotions. And help them name what those emotions are. Give them your full attention, listen actively, and never deny their feelings.
Right.
Never. And then another one is to allow them to talk without trying to fix it for them.
Right. Give them a chance to fix it themselves and work through it. Yes. Problem solving.
Let them start building up trust within their own selves that they can handle situations.
That's a good one. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So many parents, and I've been guilty of it myself, like, okay, but let's look at the positive of it. Let's look at this. And if you just listen to them, they'll either figure it out on their own or they'll just at least feel so much better.
Right.
Or maybe they'll ask you for your opinion, and that's okay if they ask you.
Yeah.
But
Ask them
so many
questions.
parents are just like, oh, okay, let me just do it for you. Let me just fix this for you.
Yep.
Let me give you advice. And the advice doesn't help. Like, even as an adult, there are certain adults in my life that when I try and talk to them about a situation I'm going through, I just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Your child just wants to be heard. But I have some friends that are fixers.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm trying to tell my story, they're, oh, well, did you try this? And what if you do this? And what if you do that? And how about this? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. If you just let me talk, you'll see how I did resolve it. Or maybe I haven't resolved it yet, but let me talk it out so I can maybe think of my own solution that works for me.
Right. Yeah.
Would be the best thing you can do for me right now. I don't need you to fix it or tell me how somebody else is failing or
That's even relationships too, with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
How often we assume this is the answer, but when you talking about kids' emotions, when they're struggling with it, you don't go fix it for them. Ask them questions to help walk them through it. Don't assume anything, because what you might be assuming, then all of a sudden they come with something totally different, which is a legitimate solution to the problem, but you didn't think of it.
Absolutely.
But they came up with it. They're going to follow through because they came up with it. They're going to support it more because they came up with it versus you. Now, if they ask you for input and solutions because they can't, that's different. Then ask them, but just don't tell them what the solutions are that you have. Ask them how those solutions make them feel. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this solution? What does that make you think?
Right.
It's putting them.
Is that something you'd like to try?
Yeah, it makes them take ownership of that solution because they had a chance to think about it and move forward.
Yes, they weren't just told what to do. Questions are so much better than advice or opinions, or questions are everything.
Yep, and keeping that open mind. Don't assume what the solution should be, because it could be, you might be thinking A, B, but C, D is a completely legitimate solution, but you never thought of it because you're so focused on A, B.
Exactly, and C, D is a better one for them.
Right.
Maybe A, B would be better for you, but they're not you.
Right, exactly. So, what a great show. We're going to have to break this into 2 episodes. But that's okay.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. There's so much to it.
And I feel like we can keep talking, but
I could talk for hours about this, so yes, cut me off.
So the basics for listening to your child's emotions and dealing with your child's emotions is stop, keep an open mind, listen, and if they're struggling, ask them to name that emotion, even if it's just the 6 basic emotions or 8 basic emotions. Go from there and ask them why. Keep an open mind and help them come up with their own solution to the problem. And in doing so, you'll build trust, respect, honesty, that will carry on through years into their adulthood, where they'll keep coming back to you to talk to you about things.
Yes. And I love that you said keep an open mind. It's so important. Beautiful.
What a great show, Kimberly.
I really enjoyed it, James.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you for listening to this episode of Honeymoon Mindset with Kids. And when you get this and understand this, it's a very hard topic. And if you don't, please reach out to Kimberly or myself. We would love to help you talk about this, so your kids will come talk to you when they're 17, 18, 21, 22 years old and older. And you and your spouse, your partner, can have that honeymoon mindset with kids.
Yes.
Any last thoughts, Kimberly?
I think we really covered it all, James.
Look down in the description. There'll be a lot of links, a lot of additional information. Thank you for listening, and we'll tune in to next time with Honeymoon Mindset.